Good morning, folks, or good evening, whichever part of the world you are in right now. Thank you so much for joining us today on this call. Today, we are basically going to talk about the implementation of blockchain in agri supply chain. We have about four presenters here. One of them happens to be Anjum Iqbal, a big, based out of Toronto, digital transformation leader, has a very good insight, has been in the tech field hands-on for the last 25 years, 25 years. I didn't. I hope I didn't give away your age, Anjum bhai, but anyway. Then we have Ashar Ahmed, recently, not recently, in a couple of years back, completed his PhD centered around blockchain. Another technical person based out of Florida right now. Then we have Omer Ahmed Khan, Karachi, Avanza Group Managing Director. Avanza basically implemented a blockchain implementation with the Sindh government, and then Omer will basically talk about that use case. And then we have, and whenever we have a lot of techies around us, we forget the farmers who we are actually building the solutions for. So we have Aamer Hayat Bhandara sir with us from Pakistan right now. He is essentially likes to call himself a farmer, but yeah, he is one. And then he's also the co-founder at Agricultural Republic, which is also like a think tank to think about agricultural policies. And anyway, with everything else, we have blockchain use cases for blockchain startups involved, a practical use case, and then Amrita will at the end talk about how it can actually help small farmers. So with having that being as the introduction, I'll hand over to Anjum bhai. I'll request. So as we move along in the presentation, the presenters who are presenting can turn on their videos, and then at the end when we have the discussion, then everybody else can turn on their videos, and then we can have a small discussion panel, right? So a lot of things to cover. This is not going to be like the absolutely detailed blockchain details that are out there. Actually, it was interesting enough because I had a friend and I talked to him and I said that we're having this seminar, and he said, why, what will a Bitcoin, what will a farmer do with Bitcoin? I'm like, Bitcoin is not the only implementation of a blockchain. There are multiple other things as well that you can do. So anyway, let's get started, and I'll put my video off and hand it over to Anjum bhai. So Anjum bhai, can you get started?
Yes. Thank you, Saad bhai. It's good to be here. Good to meet all of you guys, and obviously, it's an opportunity to learn from others also. So I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm going to share my screen. Hope everyone can see it. Oh, it's the wrong one. All right, blockchain introduction. That's where we are. Sorry, my screen is on the other side, so my camera may not be facing it, but that's where it is. So today what I plan to cover is blockchain introduction. And as Saad bhai has basically explained very quickly as well, that blockchain is not Bitcoin. So what I will cover is the basics of technology that drives blockchain and a lot of other implementation. So the underlying technology is blockchain, and you see a lot of applications of it, one of which is cryptocurrency, naming Ethereum, Bitcoin, BTC, and Dogecoin, and others.
Anjum bhai, are you presenting? Because we can only see the beautiful castle that you have. I
Really?
think, yes, we can't see I think because you have a split screen, so that's why it's not coming
How
out.
about now? Is it
Yeah, I
better?
can see the presentation mode. It's not the
Oh,
presentation mode, but we can see the slides though.
perfect. I think that's good enough for us.
Okay, cool.
All right. So starting, what is blockchain? And as I said, I'm only going to cover what the technology itself is. So blockchain is a decentralized database. And when I say decentralized, in most scenarios, if you are familiar with any database environment, there is one central place where we keep all of our data. If you think of any company, they would have a data center or a server where everyone does their thing and save it. And that's a common repository for it. It's different in data in blockchain. It's distributed, it's decentralized, meaning everyone who has access to the blockchain will have a copy of it, or will have access to it. It's immutable. That's another big feature for blockchain. Immutable refers to it cannot be changed. Once a transaction is added to it, it doesn't matter who has a copy. If it's added to and agreed on by the participants with using a consensus algorithm, it's immutable. You cannot change it. It's publicly accessible. So one of the other things the blockchain provides is a full transparency and openness about it, which makes it really great platform. And I'm sure some use cases will cover it as well. It's publicly accessible. Anyone can come in, anyone can have access to it, see it, audit it. The other aspect of it is it uses existing technologies. So it did not come in and with the groundbreaking technologies where you have to spend a lot of money in acquiring or if there is an IP involved. It uses already existing technology and it just assembles it in a way that it makes it a way more effective than any other database environment for specific use cases. It is not a be all end all. It has its own use. So we have to be very careful in basically selecting why we are using blockchain compared to any other available data store. Um, and the other most valuable proposition that blockchain offers is it enables the transfer of value in a secure, reliable, and a verifiable way. And when we say transfer of value, it could be anything. By value, most of us will recognize, hey, it could be money, but it could be any other product. It could be a crop. It could be physical assets. It could be in a shipping industry, it could be containers moving from one place to the other, right? So anything that represents value could be represented in a blockchain in a very secure, transparent manner. Moving on, I'll just give you a quick screenshot without going into too much detail, is how the centralized versus a traditional database environment would work. So think about a clearinghouse or a bank on the left-hand side of the screen, where you have all the participants. They could be entities, people, anybody participating in any banking transactions. And we know today, we have to go to a central bank. Like I cannot give money to Sadbhai without going to my bank. And then my bank is going to call or transfer some sort of a ledger transaction over to Sadbhai's bank. And that's how the money transfer will be completed. However, if we look at it from a blockchain or a decentralized distributed ledger perspective, you can see that all participants have a copy of this ledger. If I need to transfer money over from or any other valuable or thing that is represented as value on the blockchain to anybody in participating in the chain, it's very easy. I will create a transaction. Transaction will be recorded in the chain, and it will be recorded that I, let's say, for example, sent X number of dollars or something to Sadbhai. And then the whole network will participate in validating, verifying this transaction. And once that takes place, it's done. It's immutable. It won't change. It will always be there. And I can always go back and say, okay, what did I do? Let me see. Oh, okay, I transferred this much. And then Sadbhai will also see, okay, this is the amount that they received, right? So it's, in that sense, it's a it's a database environment where things can be there and everyone can rely on it being there. Before going into a bit of how it actually works, I want to talk about a little bit on where it started. So a bit of a genesis of blockchain. So blockchain basically came about by a white paper written by a guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. The paper was actually published in 2008. It's still available on the internet, and it's a good read, not a long paper. It's only 9 pages. And this person actually is a bit a mystery around him as well. Nobody can find him, and he hasn't kind of presented himself. But if you think about 2008, that's the environment when 2007, 8, 9, at least in North America and even worldwide, we were going through a depression. There is a huge housing crisis coming about in US, and everyone is affected, and all the governments are scrambling. There is a lot of distrust in the governments at that time because everyone was seeming to be printing money to just fund different organizations to kind of keep the economy afloat. And this distrust kind of led to creation of an alternative world where the question came about is, why is government controlling everything? Things should be open and transparent and in the public domain so that everyone can access and be able to participate in it. So that's where the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies came about. The first one, Bitcoin, was an implementation of Satoshi Nakamoto's paper. And it was basically put together as a alternative currency platform compared to the fiat currency as we use today, the US dollars, pound sterling, Pakistan rupees, and whatnot. So they said like, hey, these are the currency platforms that the governments control. Let's put it something out there that no one controls, and it's controlled by everyone who's participating and wants to be part of this network. So keep that in mind, that blockchain was implemented as a platform or as a place where people can participate openly, transparently, without any or much oversight or control, as long as they abide by the basic rules of blockchain, which are all implemented by using mathematical algorithms. um, you are a participant. Um, and today, if you look at Bitcoin's live since Jan 1, and today I just checked yesterday, and its total market cap is about $670 billion. And since I've been kind of following it, it's the first time I saw it, it was the total market cap was around $4 billion. So within the span of 5-6 years, you can see the amount of growth, the amount of trust that people are putting in the technology. It's here to stay, basically. The technology, I'm not a advocate or anything around cryptocurrencies, but the technology itself and its implementations are becoming way more stable compared to a few years ago, really, really fast. And we are seeing a lot of use cases coming up in the market that use this underlying technology. So a quick overview of, again, the time won't justify much of the details, but I'm happy to take it offline with anyone who wants to learn more about it. How does blockchain work? Very simply, there is a ledger. Like any bank would have a ledger, blockchain would have a ledger as well. And the ledger is of shared information, and it does not require any third party to run it. As I said before, it's decentralized, so anyone who wants it can get a copy and participate in the network. Once the data is recorded, it's immutable. It won't change. Now that prevents a lot of fraud, and that's the whole promise of the blockchain. Why you trust it? I trust it because I know that once it's in there, it cannot be changed. So it's always representing the truth. And the way it does it by way of a fingerprinting method. So obviously, if I transfer X number of dollars to Saad Bhai, maybe Umar Bhai or Ashar Bhai may not want to see that happening. So the way the blockchain kind of does it, and while still keeping the transparency on, it will basically take a fingerprint in a mathematical manner. It'll take a fingerprint of my transaction that I put in, and it will allow everyone to see that fingerprint. And as long as that fingerprint stays the same, anyone can basically validate that transaction that, yes, I know this transaction, it's always been there, and they can verify it. And we can, only people who have entered the transaction would have the decryption methods to kind of read that entire detail. But this fingerprinting makes it tamper proof. You don't need to even know what's in the transaction in order to validate it, because you have access to the fingerprint, also known as the zero trust principle in it. A very quick look on how it looks like. So you can see uh, a blockchain by name, it has blocks. Each block has X number of transactions in it, and one block is linked to the other block. And that's how the chain is created. And everyone is putting in transactions. They will be added to the block that is called the current block. And then once that block gets filled up, it is locked, meaning it's finalized, and the team says, okay, now this block is complete, let's move on to the next one. So the next block is created. Each block, as you can see, is linked with the previous block, and it also has a link of the next block in it, so that the chain is always consistent. It's always it can't be tamper-proofed, or it's tamper-proof, meaning it cannot be changed. By putting the link of the previous block and the next block in the same one, and taking a fingerprint of it, you think of it, if you want to kind of tamper it and you want to change the link from one block to the other, it actually changes your fingerprint, which means it will break the blockchain, and everybody will be able to point out that people participating saying, hey, something is wrong, this is not the right block, let's go back and fix it. So in a very mathematical, easy way, the blockchain kind of takes care of itself from being subject for fraud and any other situation where it might lose its credibility, right? So with that, I know we are, there are others also want to talk about the use cases. So I will stop here, and obviously when the panel opens up, I will be able to take more questions there.
And
So
you, Anjum, it was a pleasure because it's very, like you said, it's hard to summarize in 15 minutes all what blockchain is. There's a sea of information around the here. The purpose of this presentation here is to give you like a high level overview. So thank you so much for summarizing everything. And just in the interest, in the meantime, if Ashar, if you can get yourself started, Anjum, you'll probably have to stop presenting. Yeah, and Ashar, if you can present, turn on the, and if anybody has any questions, what we will do is you can write them down in the chat window, or you can just take a note of them either with your notebook or anything else. And then once we reach towards the end, then you can ask those questions at that time. Ashar, if you can also turn on your video as well. And I'm just gonna, so over to you, Ashar.
There are many use cases for blockchains. Earlier it was mentioned, like the most common one is the crypto one, which is like everybody's talking about. But there are a lot of other places where blockchain is being used. I've been mostly working with like audit logging through blockchains, but one of the common use case which is being worked on is supply chain, and which is not specific to like agri-tech, in other industries also. So so there are a lot of challenges in that supply chain has, because you have different stakeholders that have competing interest and that have to coordinate to in the whole supply chain process. This process is very complicated, and it's very hard to reconcile when something happens. And then traceability is really hard. So you can there was if there so one of the option is like food safety. So if there is a safety issue and there is a recall, it is like really costly. So a typical impact would be around 10 million or more. Some of the companies that I looked at, they had to spend like around 30 million on a recall. The problem is that the information is ambiguous, and you cannot like find out like which set of the supply chain had the issue. So it takes a long time to track and to figure out what goods are right and what goods have the problem, so that you can take them out. And this take a very long time to figure out what happens. In 2018, there were like 18 reported incidents, and some of them had like, there was a famous one with E. coli in romaine lettuce, and Walmart had to get rid of all of their lettuce, and then people also lost confidence. It take days to figure out what happened, and which area was contaminated. It was tracked to some farms in Arizona and a couple of other places. So Walmart, one of the executive in Walmart, he basically took a box of mangoes, which were like sliced, and he went and asked information about supply chain to figure out like how it was sourced, where it came from, and all that information. So it took them 7 days to figure out the whole process. And which in terms of, there is, if there is a food incident, then that like some of the food produced won't last that long, so you'll have to destroy all of the produce, and there is a big like impact through that. So essentially they switched to they partnered with IBM, and they switched to a hyper ledger based solution. So instead of like taking 7 days to track, it was taking them 2.2 seconds to track the source of the whole item. So in this particular case, if there was a lettuce incidence or there was an incident in mango, they would be able to track down the whole chain, and they wouldn't have to remove all the items. The current policy that Walmart has is that if there is an incident, they just take the whole of that produce off till they can figure out which of it is safe. So this is a huge improvement. Then they did an experiment, and they've been doing it in couple of other places. So one of the places where this can be used is with meat. So essentially what happens is that at the slaughterhouse, they have RFID and cameras, and they're tracking the animals as well as the whole slaughtering process. And then each and every box has a barcode or a RFID, and then it's tracked. Now, the other thing is transportation. You also want to figure out how it's transported. So it's transported with an IoT device with a GPS based system, which tracks and keeps providing the data, so you can track at real time where your item is. And then this also ensures that meat arrives in the distribution in safe conditions. So what that means is that meat has to be maintained a certain temperature. So if, for example, your shipping company had some sort of an incident where the air conditioner is not working, so you could have an IoT device which has a smart contract, and as and when the temperature goes out of that range, that smart contract would be triggered, and you'll know exactly that this particular produce which was in this particular truck is no longer valid. Something like this could also be used like right now for transporting COVID vaccines, because they have stringent requirements. Now, the last thing is, because since you know about the whole tracking, then the consumer has the ability to know where their item was produced, how it was shipped, and how you have. So, and then with the expiration date and everything, all of that is there. And everybody is competing interest. So since it's in blockchain, so they have to have it. So the transportation company, if the temperature went above or below, they don't have a way of hiding it. It would be known to everybody, all the stakeholders. There is another, Walmart did the same thing with lettuce. So they are tracking the whole thing, and boxes are marked. But it's similar to the meat one, which we talked about, and don't want to go into the whole detail. So if you have questions, we can talk about it in the question and answer session. This is an example of, so IBM and Walmart, they came up with a thing which is called IBM Food Trust. And this basically tracks, so this is one of the products which they are tracking. And it gives you the detail about like who are the primary producer for this kind of, where are the warehouse, how are they distributed, what stores have the items. So they have a whole system, and all the other stakeholders are also joining that system. And going on to blockchain gives you like, these are the 4 things that, so you'll have traceability, you can trace. And then transparency and trust is something additional, because you'll be able to trace, and then you're sure that all the information is audited by all the stakeholder in the ledger, and it's like, it cannot be changed because it's immutable, and there is an efficiency. So you, like we talked about it earlier, the transactions are recorded in real time, you know everything on real time, and then shipment and track and everything is in real time. So if there is an incident or something, you'll know what happened, you'll know the source of your food. If you have organic items, you can track it till from the time they were produced, what fertilizer were used, what other things were used. All of that information would be present in the blockchain, the country where it was produced. And that's it. So I'll hand it back to Saad.
Thank you so much, Ashar, for walking us through that pretty quickly. And of course, if there are questions, please feel free to post them in the chat window. I do see one question there, but we'll take it up towards the end. Umar, can you go ahead and and share the screen as well?
Sure. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's an amazing futuristic city.
And I hope it's changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Saad. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. So I think Saad briefly introduced about me and my company, but basically I'm representing Avanza Group, and Avanza Innovations is one of Avanza's group's company. And just to give you a very high level brief about what we do in Avanza Innovations. So blockchain, obviously the topic of this discussion today. That's the primary area that we work on in this company, along with some other cutting edge technologies like artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. And there are different spaces in which we are working right now, starting from the government transformation, digitizing everything for the government, and then obviously other areas where we are doing like in trade finance with the banks and financial institutions, and also in the supply chain domain. So we've done a number of projects in the last 2-3 years. Most of the focus has been in UAE, and the reason for that is that the UAE government has been very, very, you can say, forward going in the area of blockchain. So they set up some sort of a target for them as well, that by a certain year, they'll be able to transform everything onto blockchain. So all their government departments, the processes, everything has to go on blockchain. So a lot of the projects and a lot of the logos that you see right now on the screen are from UAE, but basically we are working in the entire region, like in UAE and the other Gulf countries. And plus recently, the case study that I'll be discussing quickly today is in Pakistan. We did it in Karachi with the Sindh government. Okay, so Collaborex is the solution that we have implemented in the Sindh Agriculture Growth Project. And it's on a very high level, it's a blockchain-enabled supply chain management system, or you can say a smart framework agreement between different stakeholders that are involved in the entire ecosystem of supply chain in agriculture, like right from the farmer to the supplier, and then the government and the kind of aid projects that they are doing. So streamlining the whole thing and digitizing everything and making it seamless end to end. And these are the different project stakeholders that were involved in this project. So obviously government of Sindh took the initiative. SAGP is one of their departments, which is the Agriculture Growth Project. That's what they call them. And it was funded by World Bank. So, and Microsoft was one of our partners, mainly as infrastructure providers. So the entire cloud, the blockchain cloud was, or the blockchain system was hosted on Microsoft's Azure cloud. And obviously we were the main solution providers or the technology partners in this project. So what is Collaborex? It uses blockchain technology and all of the good things that have been said earlier by Anjum and by Ashar. Those are obviously the strengths of this solution. So again, data immutability, auditability, very precise execution of all the processes through smart contracts, then the efficiency part, the transparency part, the trace and audit. So all the blockchain advantages that have been talked about till this point, those are obviously a byproduct of this solution. The main idea was to implement it as a platform, not just as a single project. So when I say a platform, that is an entire ecosystem where we bring all the stakeholders together. And obviously a prerequisite of any blockchain solution is some sort of consortium and some sort of authority that can drive all the stakeholders. So here again, the idea was to build an ecosystem or platform which involves the farmers, the suppliers, the government departments, the financial departments involved, and do everything through a seamless method where there are no, there is kind of no showstoppers or nothing that is stopping from the seamless execution and monitoring of the entire process. So it is currently implemented at SAGP, as I mentioned earlier, and it's streamlining the farmers' demand and the resources availability or the resources that are available with the Sindh government. So it's making sure that they reach out to the right consumer or the right farmer who is in need of those solutions or resources. It's powered by Avanza's blockchain platform, which is called Cypher. So in the earlier slide where I showed a lot of blockchain projects that we have done in the region, they're all based on one of our products, which is called Cypher, which is essentially a blockchain orchestration and organization platform, which is independent of any specific blockchain technology. So it can work with any kind of blockchain. And as I said, it's hosted on Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft is also one of the partners in this entire implementation. If we talk about the key features of the solution Collaborex, so as mentioned earlier, transparency is very important when we're talking about an entire supply chain. So this is covered very comprehensively in the solution. The entire process is managed through smart contracts, the eligibility criteria, how the different stages of the whole process will be managed. So everything is transparent, it's visible to everyone, and there is no chance of fraud or any underlying deals or under table deals that can happen in this. And obviously, I think everybody knows that the main issue in public sector over the years has been digitization of the data. So moving to a paperless solution was the key aspect in the solution. And the entire processes and procedures and everything had to be digitized. So this is, again, one of the key features of this solution. And then the monitoring is proactive. Every transaction goes on the ledger. Every transaction is traceable end to end. And if there is any sort of discrepancy or any sort of problem that arises in future, it's easy to track and ensure that the entire process is followed in a proper manner. And one of the, obviously, in the new world order where we are going through this COVID and pandemic and everything, so obviously when we go digital, the biggest advantage is that you kind of reduce the contact between people. You kind of reduce the need to go into certain offices, to banks to get your work done. And so obviously this solution is kind of pandemic compliant, where the farmer, right from the beginning, from the application process to selection of the right resources, and then the dispersal and everything, and then actual delivery of the items that he has selected right to his doorstep, everything is managed through a digital process, and we avoid the contact between different people. So that is, again, one of the advantages of this solution. So on a very high level, because we are a little bit short in time and I don't want to go into a lot of details of the solution, but on a very high level, if I just show you the process flow. So again, as I said, all stakeholders are covered. So right, starting from the supplier who have the different resources that are needed by farmers, they get into smart contracts with the government, and everything is driven through that framework. And once we have that, the online application allows the farmer to discover these resources. It's kind of a farmer's marketplace where he can search either for the resources that he needs or the solutions that he needs, or if there is any sort of subsidy or funding he's looking for. So he goes online and he looks for those solutions. And then once he has selected those, he has to meet a certain criteria. So as I mentioned earlier, the entire eligibility process is driven through smart contracts. So the filtering is done automatically. And if he qualifies, then he obviously moves on to the next stage where a PO is issued for the resource that is required by the farmer. And then obviously the farmer is asked to submit the payments electronically or through demand drafts or pay orders. And once his payment is done, and obviously, again, the payments are tracked through the entire blockchain. So end-to-end transaction is on the blockchain. And once the payments and all is done, then we have the dispersal and delivery part that comes in the end. So on a very high level, this is the, you can call the workflow that happens or the process that happens in the entire ecosystem. So I'll just skip the technical architecture part. I think that'll take a lot of time, but Just on a high level, I'll show you some of the kind of interface that the farmer is dealing with. So this is, so these are some of the screens where the farmer goes, he registers, he enters his basic information like his NIC and his region, and some sort of other data that is needed by the application. Then he selects the products or the resources that he's looking for or that are available in the marketplace. And then he goes through the entire qualification process. His land records have to be uploaded. So again, this is one of the validations that are done by the land department or by the agriculture department. So he uploads his land record documents for validation purpose. And then his application is submitted. Once it's submitted, then it goes into the back office. So this is a glimpse of the back office where the SAGP processes this application, verifies the data, and then it goes through the entire, which you say, the authorization process and the disbursal process. So finally, a purchase order is issued against which the farmer has to deposit the funds. And once he makes the payment, then the delivery cycle is completed. So I'm sorry, I just rushed through everything, but due to the limited time, I just wanted to give a very high level idea of what we have done here in Pakistan. And it's kind of a framework, or you can say it's kind of a solution or ecosystem which can very easily be replicated across different use cases. So it's a very generic kind of solution, but it gives you on a high level an idea how blockchain is useful in this domain and how it can solve a lot of issues that we face, especially in Pakistan, between the different entities that are involved in this entire agriculture process. So thank you, Saad. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Omer. Really appreciate you walking us through that good use case. And I'm sure there's a lot of details around at the back end as to how it is all done. But like we said earlier, and just for those folks who joined the call a little bit after, then the intention of this session is just to give or touch the tip of the iceberg and to have or initiate the conversations around blockchain and its implementation in the agro supply chain perspective. Anyway, I saw some really great interfaces, Umar, so that's really good work. And that's also one of the things that we'll probably have Aamer Saab. Aamer Saab, if you could please step up to the podium now. So if you can just, if you have reached your farm, I hope, hoping you're in a good, yeah. So you heard these three technologists speak a lot about the whole solution, and we won't mind the background. We understand that you're in a rural setting, so it's all fine. So what
you can listen dog barking, and you can even
so maybe if you can from a farmer's perspective, and just to give an introduction about Aamer Saab. Aamer Saab is a co-founder at Agriculture Republic. It's a think tank that focuses on introducing policy in Pakistan, and they're working with the government and bringing up newer ideas for discussion. And also he's inherently a farmer as well, so he has a perspective. So Aamer Saab, over to you.
Thank you very much, Saad Saab, and thank you very much to the speakers spoke earlier for the wonderful presentations. I don't know if we have any foreign guests with us or not, but should I continue in English or?
It's a totally मैं ऐसे वो flow of conversation कभी कभार वो चलता तो मैं English में, but you can talk in English also, that's fine. No problem.
I just want to ask you whatever you, even I can speak in Saraiki or Hindi a little bit, but oh, Sindhi. Acha. I always says that if you make the value chain, agriculture value chain, accountable, transparent, and traceable, there are less chances for farmers to suffer with loss, and there are less chances for consumers to pay more. If this is a very good idea, like our dear gentleman was speaking about blockchain, the ledgers, and how they are interconnected, and how they are on a one place, even every transaction is traceable and transparent. I think the shortage of few agriculture commodities we are facing, अगर ये हमारे पास पहले हम digitalization में चले जाते तो ये ना होता. But unfortunately, some problems at the farmers, and I would like to discuss with all of you, because you are actually working on the solutions. Uh, uh, the last speaker was telling about a project in Sindh. I do not know that what type of farmers were on board. Pakistan's farming community can be segregated in big, middle, and small farmers. And 85% of the small farmers who have limited access to almost every, financial capacity or capability, they do not have enough money to buy in advance their inputs for their crop production. So they have to rely on some middlemen or artis or mandis. They go there. If we are providing them these technologies or these type of platforms, how we are going to engage those people who are actually tied up in the you don't want to say anything?
No, that's fine. I think there's a. You go ahead. You go ahead.
No problem. No problem. Okay. So we need to design some solutions for those people who have limited access to finances. And even I am sitting on my farm. I'm actually standing on my farm because I have a very limited internet access here. So we need to provide these type of solutions with all the facilities available. Secondly, in the whole value chain, we have to understand, we have to look into it, that who is ready to be a part of it. Farmers हो सकता है कि वो इस ब्लॉकचेन का हिस्सा या इस सॉल्यूशन का हिस्सा बनना चाह रहे हो, but what about the middlemen? What about the local artis? What about the local market players, even the supply chain players or the wholesalers? What about those? How we are going to take all those stakeholders on board in this? Secondly,
बल्कि वो सॉरी आमिर साहब, आपको मैं थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे वो काट रहा हूँ क्योंकि आपके साथ थोड़ा सा तरह इंटरेक्टिव डिस्कशन का भी पॉइंट है। आपने वीडियो अपना ऑफ कर दिया जा, वो
मेरा वीडियो इसलिए ऑफ हो गया क्योंकि यहाँ पे थोड़े से सिग्नल्स के प्रॉब्लम है, तो हो सकता है कि कहीं मैं ओके मैं ऑन कर दूं वीडियो अपनी। वो अच्छा में ज़्यादा इंटरेक्टिव ज़्यादा लगता है। अच्छा चलें।
मैं आपने भी जो रिसेंट एक अपना आर्टिकल में गल्फ न्यूज़ वाले में शेयर किया है, इसमें आपने बात लिखी है कि डू नॉट टेक दी मिडलमैन आउट। उसके रोल को लिमिट जरूर करना है, लेकिन उसको कम्प्लीटली इक्वेशन से निकाल भी नहीं सकते। तो वो भी एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, मेरे ख्याल है उस पर भी कुछ रोशनी डालें थोड़ा सा।
जी, मैं उसी तरफ ही आना चाह रहा था, क्योंकि हमारी जो सप्लाई चेन है, जो हमारी एग्रीकल्चर वैल्यू चेन है, उसमें कुछ प्लेयर्स बहुत पावरफुल हैं। उसमें जो आपका मिडलमैन है, उसको आप एक ही साथ इसी तरह एक्सक्लूड नहीं कर सकते। वो जो आर्टिकल था, उसमें मिनिस्टर साहब जो हमारे शौकत तरीन साहब हैं, उनकी तरफ से ये स्टेटमेंट था कि विद द एलिमिनेशन ऑफ मिडलमैन फ्रॉम द एग्रीकल्चर वैल्यू chain, we can support by enhancing their profit from 35 to 40%. So I was totally against that view that we cannot take completely middleman out of the value chain, क्योंकि हमारा जो local structure है पाकिस्तान का, middleman or the RT or the broker is actually the guarantor between the farmer and the buyer. अब मैं अगर अपनी क्रॉप जो है, फॉर एग्जांपल मेरा जो फेलो फार्मर है, इज जस्ट 5 एकड़ फार्मर, तो वो अपनी जो क्रॉप है वो मंडी में लेकर जाता है, तो नो वन इज रेडी टू बाय होल द 5 एकड़ जो उसकी क्रॉप है। साथ साथ आप नहीं ले सकते, मैं नहीं ले सकता, मेरी यूटिलिटी नहीं है, बट अ प्रोसेसर कैन बाय दैट। तो वो जो मिडल मैन है, ही इज एक्चुअली प्लेइंग द रोल ऑफ अ गारंटर बिटवीन दीज टू, but the role should be limited and role should be checked of the middleman. जिस तरह ये अभी blockchain का अगर उसमें वो successfully अगर if that can be a part of this chain, तो मेरे ख्याल में उसका रोल जो है वो लिमिट हो सकता है just only for जो उसकी ब्रोकरेज है या जो वो गारंटर है। बट एट द मोमेंट तो मिडलमैन जो यहाँ पे रोल प्ले कर रहा है, वो ऑलमोस्ट जो इनपुट सप्लायर से लेकर फर्टिलाइजर डीलर, सीड डीलर और इवन बायर परचेजर तक वो प्ले कर रहा है। तो these things, ये जो मेरे ख्याल में ये फवायद जो हैं वो शायद हमें डिजिटल होके ज्यादा बेहतर तौर पर मिल सकते हैं। मैंने जो स्टार्ट में भी बात की कि अगर हम ट्रेसेबल अपनी इसको वैल्यू चेन को, सप्लाई चेन को कर लेते हैं और अकाउंटेबल कर लेते हैं, तो शायद बहुत बेहतर अंदाज में हम फार्मर को भी फायदा दे सकते हैं। और हमारे एक और बड़ा मसला है, वी डू नॉट हैव एक्यूरेट नंबर्स। इवन यू आर अ पार्ट ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर रिपब्लिक, आप उसमें भी देखें, अभी रिसेंटली एक डिस्कशन स्टार्ट हो रही है कि गवर्नमेंट जो नंबर बता रही है वीट के, वो हमें हमें समझ नहीं आ रहे, जो रिसर्चर्स हैं उनको भी समझ नहीं आ रहे, क्योंकि अभी भी कुछ वीट जो है बलूचिस्तान से, अगर कोई दोस्त हमारे इस ग्रुप में अभी इस सेशन में है, स्टिल देयर इज सम वीट लेफ्ट टू हार्वेस्ट, बट गवर्नमेंट ने अपने नंबर्स दे दिए हैं ऑलरेडी। तो वी डू नॉट हैव एक्यूरेट डेटा, वी डू नॉट हैव एक्यूरेट नंबर्स। तो अगर हमारे पास एक्यूरेट डेटा और एक्यूरेट नंबर स्टार्ट से ही मौजूद नहीं है, तो हम आगे डिसाइड किस तरह करेंगे, इवन इफ वी हैव अ ब्लॉकचेन अवेलेबल और हमारे तमाम स्टेक होल्डर्स उसके अंदर मौजूद हैं।
वो मेरा ख्याल है यू राइट, चीज़ें तो काफ़ी सारी उसमें और भी हैं शामिल। यहाँ पे असल में आमिर साहब 10 मिनट रह गए हमारे उस कंक्लूजन में, तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि कुछ सवाल आए हुए, और अगर पूरा पैनल अपने वीडियोस ऑन कर ले, उमर, अशर, अंजुम भाई, अगर आप लोग अपना ऑन कर लें ताकि वी कैन टेक इट फ्रॉम देयर देन अकॉर्डिंगली। अच्छा जी, पहला सवाल मेरा ख्याल है आया था फाद अंसारी की तरफ से। I'll call out the question और फिर उसके हिसाब से जवाब दे दें। Mr. Anjum, you discussed about blockchain being a collection of decentralized ledgers, each of which contains information about which blocks comes next and which comes before it in the chain. How is this chain order maintained without a centralized mechanism to assign this order? I think you, Anjum भाई, आपने जवाब तो दिया था, लेकिन you want to expand further
well,
on
इसके
that?
ऊपर तो we can talk a very long time, लेकिन एक बेसिक चीज थोड़ी सी ज़हन में हमें रखनी चाहिए ब्लॉकचेन, जो कि मेरी अपनी थोड़ी, मुझे भी टाइम लगा था वहां जाने में. In any database technology, if we take our existing approach of centralized or relational database and try to apply it on blockchain, तो हमें काफी सारे इश्यूज आएंगे, हमें इक्वलेंसी, कंकरेंसी, ऑर्डर्स, इस तरह के. तो we need to kind of understand how blockchain database or ledger works, and then we'll be able to kind of answer all these questions. So the order maintenance is actually, it's kind of built into a mechanism of one block linking to the previous and next, and it's the first block is marked by not having a previous link, right? So it's called the genesis block. And there is no way to actually go and query or access data saying, hey, can give me the all data from this chain, unless you just traverse it, meaning you start from the first one, you just keep going to the next till you find what you need. And that's in the public blockchain. There have been a lot of work done in private or permission networks where some of these tools have been built to kind of aid in a lot of these or use case specific implementations are out there now. लेकिन उसको ट्रेवर्स करने के अलावा there is no other way, और यही मैकेनिज्म है जिससे वो अपनी इंटेग्रिटी मेंटेन करता.
ठीक. साइमा खोरो का सवाल है उमर आपके लिए. Suppose an encrypted block is hacked or has some issue, then how an innovation's smart chain blockchain will be assessed?
Yeah, sure. I think what Anjum just said, you need to understand how the blockchain is structured and how it works. So, I mean, briefly, if I tell you that, as we discussed earlier, that it's a chain of blocks, but it's in a distributed network. So we don't have a single place where all the blocks reside. So it's so much distributed that it requires a lot of computation power if you are to access a majority or a certain number of blocks and try to alter them. And each block is obviously secured through cryptography and other methods. And every participant has their own private key. So what you just said, that if a particular block or a record is modified or altered, so that digital signature will become invalid. And once that happens, the entire peer network will know that something has gone wrong. So the early intimation and early reaction helps to fix the network or sync that particular block with the other data. So this is how, that's the uniqueness. So yeah.
Let me just add like one
Anjum,
other thing.
yeah.
Sorry, to just clarify or like add on to what Omer has just stated. Think of Wikipedia. It's an open network. Anyone can go and update any page of information. But if you try to go and change any of that information, within less than a minute, someone else will come in and correct it, right? And that's the same concept in the blockchain as well, where because it's everyone is participating in it, and one of the requirements for participating in any blockchain is to keep an eye on it and making sure that you're validating the transactions as well. That's called the proof of work in there. And if you change or anybody tries to corrupt the data in there, there is going to be someone who will be able to find out, point it out, and then the rest of the chain members will correct it, right? So they'll automatically just take that transaction out from that.
Perfect.
So the network maintains itself.
Yeah, I'll just ask Ashar as well. Ashar, since you've done a complete PhD on this topic, spent a whole time in your life doing all of this, is there anything else that you want to add on this?
Essentially, if I go back and not talk about technology, let's assume there are 10 people, 10 लोग हैं, उन 10 लोगों के पास registers हैं जिन पे उन्होंने transactions लिखी हुई हैं, 10 लोगों के पास पड़े। अब वो 10 लोग उस registers में तब तक entry नहीं कर सकते जब उन 10 लोगों में से 6 लोग मिलके उसमें इकट्ठे बैठ के एंटर करेंगे, तभी चेंज होगा, और चेंज उस तक नहीं हो सकता। तो आप ये अज्यूम करें कि वो 6 के 10 बंदे आते हैं, इकट्ठे बैठते हैं, उसमें एंटर करते हैं, और वो फिर जब चेंज करेंगे तो पूछे, और वो एक एंट्री दूसरी एंट्री पे डिपेंडेंट है, जैसे एक फाइनेंशियल रिकॉर्ड होता है तो वो बैलेंस नहीं फिर मैच करता। तो उस तरह से अगर आप बिल्कुल लो लेवल पे चले जाएं, इट्स समथिंग लाइक दैट, क्योंकि फिर चेंज नहीं हो सकता। साथ जाके नहीं कह सकता कि मैंने इसको चेंज करके ये बात इस तरह से नहीं है। नॉर्मल लाइफ में साथ कह सकता है, पर ब्लॉकचेन वाली लाइफ में नहीं कह सकता।
ठीक है, मुझे आपने जरूर, बहुत शुक्रिया आपका। चले, we'll continue forward. Mirza Abdul Wahab का question है, oh no, that's not a question. I don't know the name here. Web, I would be interested to know how exploitation, इस पे तो मेरा ख्याल है जवाब हो गया है। साइमा खुरो का एक और सवाल है। My second question is, in wheat and flour milling industry, how millers confirm the quality of moisture test and quality of wheat, and how blockchain can benefit in storing wheat? मेरा ख्याल है आमिर साहब ये आपकी तरफ आपका बनता है इसके ऊपर जवाब देना थोड़ा सा।
यार एक फार्मर का बनता तो नहीं है वैसे, पर खैर ट्राई कर लेता हूं।
नहीं, उसका जो उन्होंने बात की ना, उसका कि वो कैसे वो कंफर्म कैसे होता है, क्वालिटी ऑफ मॉइस्चर टेस्ट एंड क्वालिटी ऑफ व्हीट वगैरह कैसे मेंटेन होता है।
देखें, अगर पाकिस्तान की बात करें तो पाकिस्तान में थोड़ा डिफरेंट है। पाकिस्तान में आप जब अपनी मंडी में क्रॉप लेके जाते हैं, मैं आपको थोड़ा सा वैल्यू चेन का बता देता हूँ। फार्मर्स पर्सपेक्टिव ये है कि जब आप फार्मर लेके जाते हैं तो मंडी में नॉर्मली साथ साथ बड़ी हैरानकुन बात है कि लोग हाथ से चेक करके मास्टर का अंदाजा करते हैं और उसी पे रेट बताते हैं। दिस इज रियली डिसअपॉइंटिंग फॉर द फार्मिंग कम्युनिटी। Like blockchain or any digitalization may help more in it. That farmer is the only one in this value chain in Pakistan who cannot set the price of their crop. There is someone else who is actually setting the price of that crop. तो उसकी जो moisture level है, वो एक तो वो अपने तजुर्बे से चेक करते हैं, फिर there are moisture meters, तो वो उनसे चेक करते हैं। दैट इज जो पैमाना है, जो मॉइस्चर मीटर बता रहा होता है, उसी पे चल के जो है वो जो उसका मॉइस्चर है वो उसको चेक करके, उसकी क्वालिटी को चेक करके, तो फिर उसकी रेट लगा दिया जाता है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली पाकिस्तान हैव वेरी लिमिटेड ड्राइंग फैसिलिटीज हियर, सो ना तो फार्मर उसको स्टोर कर सकते हैं और ना उसको प्रॉपरली ड्राई करके उसकी क्वालिटी को मेंटेन रख सकते हैं। हाउ ब्लॉकचेन कैन हेल्प, ये शायद मेरे जो दोस्त हैं वो बेहतर बता सकेंगे। मैं थोड़ा सा आपको आइडिया दे देता हूँ। मैं 2018 में
जी, ये जो आप वीट की मॉइस्चर लेवल मेजर करते हैं, ये एंड पे जब बेच रहे खरीद रहे होते हैं उस वक्त करते हैं, या पूरे प्रोसेस में हर वक्त जो होता है?
नो, ये हम कर रहे होते हैं जब मंडी में जाता है
जी,
तो मंडी में इसका वो उसको चेक कर लेते हैं मॉइस्चर को, और मॉइस्चर को चेक करके वो उसका रेट लगा देते हैं। उसके बाद उसने पैक होना है, उसके बाद उसने आगे जहां भी जाना है।
ठीक है।
फार्मर को जो उसको प्राइस उसकी मिलती है वो मंडी के अंदर जब उसका मॉइस्चर चेक होता है, वो इसीलिए तो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ ना कि वी डू नॉट हैव ड्राइंग फैसिलिटीज हियर, क्योंकि चूंकि ड्राइंग फैसिलिटीज हमारे पास है नहीं, तो हमको मजबूरन मंडी में फेंकना पड़ता है सस्ते दामों। तो इफ वी हैव ड्राइंग फैसिलिटीज एट द वेरी यूनियन काउंसिल लेवल और इवन द विलेज लेवल, तो शायद कोई भी जो है वो एक तो क्वालिटी आपकी खराब नहीं होगी। आई थिंक ये यूएसएआईडी की रिपोर्ट है, गालबन आई विल शेयर विद यू साथ, तो आप दोस्तों के साथ शेयर कर दीजिएगा कि $324 मिलियन का लॉस था सिर्फ पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट लॉसेस में वीट, मेज और कॉर्न का, पाकिस्तान का लास्ट ईयर का आई थिंक। तो ब्लॉकचेन की इसमें हेल्प इस तरह हो सकती है कि if we have drying facilities and if we have the complete value chain digitalized, तो आई थिंक उसमें चूंकि एक प्रोसेस होगा, जिस तरह मैं अमेरिका का आपको बता रहा था कि करगिल की फैसिलिटी पे मैं गया सेंट डिमांड्स में, तो वहां पे एक फार्मर एक ट्रक लेके आया अपना, उसने वहां पे जो वो फैसिलिटी थी उसके नीचे लगाया, ऑटोमेटिकली एक सेंसर उसके अंदर आया, उसने उसका मॉइस्चर चेक किया और उसने उसको अनलोड कर दिया ड्राइंग फैसिलिटी के अंदर। तो वो डिजिटलाइज था, उसकी एवरीथिंग वाज आई थिंक उनके लेजर्स में थी कि उसके ट्रेसेबल भी था, वो जस्ट फार्म से आ रहा था, तो एवरीथिंग एवरी जो उसका स्टेप था वो दैट वाज चेक्ड एंड ट्रांसपेरेंट। तो मेरे ख्याल में ये हेल्प आउट हो सकता है, बट वी हैव टू हैव ऑल द फैसिलिटीज, मशीनरी, फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस, एवरीथिंग इज अवेलेबल विद द फार्मिंग कम्युनिटी इन पाकिस्तान।
तो आमिर साहब ने एक थोड़ा सा उसका बिजनेस कॉन्टेक्स्ट तो एक्सप्लेन कर दिया कि क्या है, अगर उसमें कोई अंजुम भाई या उमर, अशर, इफ यू वांट टू गिव कि ये ब्लॉकचेन इसके अंदर कैसे बेनिफिट कर सकती है स्टोरिंग वीट में, उसमें कोई ऐड करना चाहेंगे या?
स्टोरिंग वीट में अगर तो कॉन्स्टेंटली उसको मॉनिटर कर रहे हैं, तो एक सेंसर जो इधर भी वीट स्टोरेज फैसिलिटी है उसमें लगा हो सकता है, और जब भी मॉइस्चर अप और डाउन होगा तो somebody can be intimated and that information can be logged in blockchain। तो जब कोई वीट लेने वो बेचने आएगा तो उसको पता लग जाएगा कि इस वीट का मॉइस्चर लेवल क्या, कहाँ, किस तरह, कब चेंज हुआ, क्या रहा। और अगर आप तो, और ये यहाँ से मुझे लग रहा है कि यूज केस ये है कि जब वो बेचते हैं सिर्फ उस वक्त लॉग करना है, तो इट्स अ लिटिल डिफरेंट, मतलब लॉग हो सकता है, बट मतलब हम थोड़ा सा और पता करना पड़ेगा कि हाँ
ठीक है।
भी है कि नहीं।
अंजुम भाई का देख लेते हैं। अंजुम भाई आपको
नो अदर थिंग कि देखें, IoT यूज करके हम सेंसर से काफी चीजें कर सकते हैं, लेकिन आई एम ऑलवेज एन एडवोकेट के टेक्नोलॉजी कैन नॉट बी द ओनली सोल्यूशन इन दिस सिनेरियो। जो अभी आमिर भाई ने बताया सारा इंडिकेट्स ऑल्सो कि थोड़ा सा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का भी इश्यू है। अब जैसे उन्होंने वो ड्राइंग फैसिलिटी का जिक्र किया है, अब इसको ब्लॉकचेन कॉम्पनसेट नहीं कर सकती। तो अगर पाकिस्तान में जैसे ड्राइंग फैसिलिटी ज्यादा हो जाएंगी, नाउ यू कैन यूज ब्लॉकचेन मोर इफेक्टिवली कि जी आपकी क्रॉप एक जगह से निकलती है, इट हैज टू गो टू द ड्राइंग बोर्ड, वहां से उस प्रोसेस के बाद आप आगे जाते हैं, तो इट ब्रिंग्स मोर कंसिस्टेंसी इन द प्रोसेस, और फार्मर्स को भी ज्यादा बेनिफिट मिल सकता है, क्योंकि उनको पता है कि भाई सारी जो क्रॉप बिकेगी, नोबडी कैन रैंडमली असाइन कि मुझे इतने पैसे दे दो और दूसरे को इतने पैसे दे दो just because of the moisture level। तो थोड़ा सा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की तरफ भी हमें इन्वेस्टमेंट करनी पड़ेगी, and then I think the technology itself could actually be more effective।
ठीक है। अच्छा, जस्ट इन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ टाइम आई जस्ट वांट टू से 10:02 है, लेकिन एक डिस्कशन इंटरेस्टिंग चल रहा है, वी विल कंटिन्यू विद दैट, but just for those folks who have hard stop at the time that we had allocated, you may feel free to drop off. There will be a recording available on YouTube that will be made afterwards, so you can follow up on the session at that time, but we will continue with the discussion regardless, because I think this is good momentum that we have here. So एक मिर्जा अब्दुल वहाब का एक simple question है, please share simplest solution for farmers to start with। maybe that is directed towards you, Umar। So is there a simplest solution for farmers out there, Umar, which you guys offer? और एक और उमर मेरा उसी में एक सवाल, एक और सवाल उसमें एक और, yeah, go ahead।
May I please speak on actually I am by profession engineer, I am electrical engineer, I am all works with
असल में मिर्जा अब्दुल वहाब आपकी आवाज कट रही है।
Actually yes, I know, actually traveling also। What I want to ask, blockchain is a very good, it may prove to be a good solution, but I want that to motivate people। I want
नहीं, मेरा ख्याल है, अच्छा मेरा ख्याल है
actually what I want to say।
Aamer Hayat, there's some challenges of sound there, but maybe we can come back to that question a little bit after. लेकिन उमर आपका कोई इस पे कोई क्योंकि मेरा एक और सवाल ये भी था जो पीछे आमिर साहब ने बात की थी, मुख्तलिफ फार्मर्स के लेवल्स भी है ना, किसी के पास जैसे 12 एकड़ जमीन है, किसी के पास 50 एकड़ है, किसी के पास 100 एकड़ या 200 एकड़ है या 300 एकड़ है। आपका जो सोल्यूशन है वो किस टारगेट? या तो मैं उमर की बात कह रहा था कि आपका सोल्यूशन किस में टारगेट कर रहा है? या
Yeah, so this was a very particular solution, a requirement from an entity within the government. So usme, it was obviously driven by the parameters set by them. But in general, when we talk about technology and especially moving into the mobile app and mobile usage space, we all know that Pakistan, the mobile, the smartphone usage is way up than many other similar countries. So the whole target is to reach to an end user in a way which is convenient and easy for him to start his process to get into this entire ecosystem or the supply chain. So there is no limit in terms of how small a farmer is or how big a farmer is. You can target different segments or different sizes accordingly. The idea is that the user experience and the accessibility has to be simple and reachable to everyone. So I think with mobile apps and mobile technology, I think that barrier is already broken. And it's surprising there are a lot of people who can't sign or who can't write their name can still use a smartphone and smartphone apps in Pakistan. So that is a big plus for us.
Perfect. Thank you.
I would like to add one point here that we have very limited data about even farmers. हमें properly नहीं पता कि what every farmer is doing. How many even acres any farmer have. So there are a lot of farmers who are absentee farmers who own land, but they do not farm their lands. They do not cultivate their lands. Yeah. So first we have to digitalize the farming community. First we have to have the data of the real farmers on ground. Then I think we can move forward to the whole chain.
Perfect. अच्छा, मुझे ये भी थोड़ा अंदाजा हो रहा है, मेरे ख्याल है पाकिस्तान में मगरिब का भी टाइम हो रहा है, तो we'll just try to quickly wind up couple of questions. मेरे ख्याल है 3-4 questions तो हैं यहाँ पे. Emirates वाला question मैं drop कर दूंगा इमाद, because there is something very Avanza specific, तो I can reach out to them afterwards. हमजा का जो सवाल है मेरा ख्याल है broadly answer हो गया है, लेकिन ये मिडिल मैन का जो रोल है इसके ऊपर बात हमारी हो ही गई है. जो मसूद का क्वेश्चन था, और एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन ले लेते हैं, साथ जहीर का है. आई वुड रेज अ क्वेश्चन एज वेल एज अ सजेशन टू लुक इनटू ब्लॉकचेन मैनेजमेंट ऑफ वाटर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड शेयरिंग. Water is actually allocated, distributed and sold as a commodity at the farm level in Pak Agri sector. The manual management of politics around this essential and limited commodity is a major headache. इस पे कुछ अगर आमिर साहब आपके कोई कमेंट हो वाटर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड शेयरिंग के बारे में.
ये बड़ा जबरदस्त सवाल है. Water and close to my heart as well. But water की जो situation है, I don't know how blockchain will be helping in this scenario. क्योंकि हमें पाकिस्तान में water जो है in agriculture, although we are blamed, farmers are normally blamed to use 90% of water in the agriculture sector. So we have three resources from where we are getting water: from ground pumping, from canal water, surface water, and then from the rain. तो अब उसमें डेफिनेटली जो एग्रीकल्चर का जो पानी बेचने का है वो दो चीजों के अंदर आता है, या तो ट्यूबवेल में आता है या आपकी जो सरफेस वाटर में आता है. बट डोंट नो के व्हाट ही वाज आस्किंग अबाउट के उसमें किस तरह का डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का वो फरमा रहे हैं. बट यस, वी आर रनिंग शॉर्ट ऑफ वाटर इन पाकिस्तान. तो इसमें आई थिंक अगर उमर साहब या कोई हमें बता सकें कि हाउ टेक्नोलॉजी कैन हेल्प अस विद सेंसर्स, कि कितना हमें पानी की यूटिलिटी शायद चाहिए या कितना हम, क्योंकि अभी आज आपसे मेरी बात जब हो रही थी तो आई वाज विद डीजी एग्रीकल्चर पंजाब. So there was a very hilarious point that the Sahiwal division is a 3 district division, and we are using some more than 30% water than our desire. just due to water intensive crops. So it means अगर हम इसी तरीके से चलते रहे तो अगले 10-20 सालों में हम desert होंगे. This is the most fertile land of Pakistan जहाँ पे हम रहते हैं.
Yeah. मेरा ख्याल है ऑफ कोर्स पॉइंट्स तो बहुत सारी चीजें डिस्कशंस भी हैं. मेरा ख्याल है दिस वाज अ वेरी गुड स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट फॉर अस. इन टाइम्स टू कम हम इन डिस्कशंस को आगे भी लेके चलेंगे. लेकिन जो लुबे लुबाब है, ऑफ कोर्स ब्लॉकचेन एक बहुत बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है टेक्नोलॉजी का. अगर इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा सके फार्मर्स की अपहीवल के लिए, दैट विल बी इंपॉर्टेंट. बट also the fact that we also need to understand that whenever we are introducing technology, the farmers need to be integrated alongside into those solutions, and we have to kind of make those work together. So anyway, with that being said, thank you so much Anjum bhai, Ashar, Omer and Aamer Saab for being a part of this and sharing your thoughts, and of course to all the participants who are on the call or who joined and shared their questions. Unfortunately, we could not take all the questions. Next time अगर हम फिर इंशाल्लाह इसको ऐसे पोजीशन करेंगे कि मगरिब से पहले पहले पाकिस्तान में खत्म होने का टाइम बन सके. तो बहुत शुक्रिया आप सबका. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
वालेकुम.
Thank you, sir.